Okay. Is there anything else that we can decide today? It sounds like what you're saying is, and I don't know if you've received this document, and I know it's circulated, I don't know to whom. We have it in writing. In presenting all plans, map drawers must provide evidence of their assessments and explain the manner in which their proposed maps satisfy this rule. And you're saying that that needs to be done on a case-by-case basis with the map of the whole. And I think, Kareem, that's sort of what you were saying as well, with the understanding that you can go back and consider, we want everybody to go back and look at the benchmarks, but both of you are saying exact numbers, we shouldn't put that in official guidance. Is that what you're saying?
Madam Co-Chair?
Yes.
I would favor...
Dr. Creighton.
Thank you. I would favor an approach that would say, with respect to the benchmark plan, give us your assessment of how your map maintains political opportunity to elect candidates as the language offers in the document. I agree there shouldn't be, from the outset, hard numbers. I think Brian sort of articulated the same view, but I do think for this to be useful, there needs to be some assessment for comparison, and the comparison ought to be the last, benchmark legally enforceable plan given 2020 numbers, which takes into account the potential that there have been shifts that either require more or less than what one might have assumed based on what the configurations were in 2010. So using the benchmark plan as a starting point, give us your assessment of how your map performs with respect to political opportunity, or verts to that effect.
Madam Chairman.
Senator McDougall, and then I think I saw Delegate Simon.
Madam Chairman, this is a question to both attorneys. So again, on the Senate plan, so I think when you're talking about benchmark, that would include congressional, but we're only talking about the House and Senate right now. On the Senate map that was drawn in 2010, same individuals drew it, same individuals voted for it. That was not litigated. It was only the House map that was litigated and went through that process. Why would we not want to have an assessment of how the maps do for after it was litigated and the way it was originally drawn? Why wouldn't we want that analysis of where the difference was in the map makers to explain that for both?
Madam Co-Chair, I guess I can start with that. I think, Senator, that the important...
Brian Tyson.
Brian Tyson, I'm sorry. The important point is that historically in Voting Rights Act jurisprudence, you look at the last legally enforceable plan. And so the last legally enforceable plan was the plan that existed immediately before the census that was in force. And so, while I don't think there's necessarily a problem with going back and looking at the original plan, I think we have to remember that there was Section 2 litigation about that plan that resulted in different districts being drawn. So that's why I think that what Dr. Creighton has proposed makes sense in terms of we can look at the benchmark. I think also, there's been a number of things we've done as requests of the co-chairs to the map drawers, as opposed to kind of formal guidance adopted by the commission. I think that this is a topic that would fit really well as guidance. Here's the thing you're supposed to do. Co-chairs request that as you're presenting your plans, please address this point of how this compares to the benchmark plans for the House and the Senate. I think that's absolutely appropriate and would be a very good way to handle this.
Do you have any follow-up questions?
No.
Okay. Delegate Simon?
So it sounds like the attorneys agree that they could, in working with the map makers on both sides, give them some guidance to be prepared to explain when they present their maps how they compare to the benchmark plans with respect to the treatment of racial minorities and minorities' ability to elect the members of their choice. And so if there's agreement that that's what they're going to do and that's the instruction, I think, and I'll be up to Ms. Harris, but I think that probably accomplishes what we were trying to do. If everybody agrees that that's the way they're going to go forward. And then my final point is going to be to remind everybody that it takes 6 citizens and 6 legislators to pass a map. And so we need to come together on these issues sooner rather than later. We can't keep having these 8-8 divides. So hopefully this is a good sign that we were able to come to some consensus between the Republicans and the Democrats on how to approach this.
Is there any, is there a motion on the table?
Madam Chairman, did I just hear Delegate Simon say that if the co-chairs did some direction about starting with benchmark and having the map draws give their assessment of how it meets that or doesn't meet that, that would be consensus, so we could be up, I don't know, is that what I heard?
Madam Chair, I think what I heard from the two attorneys was they don't need
Delegate Simon.
a motion. I'm sorry, this Delegate Simon. I think I heard from the attorneys was they don't need a motion, that they feel like they've received enough guidance and that they'll confirm with the co-chairs, but that they feel like they've been essentially told to instruct their map makers, because right, the map makers were hired by the attorneys. They'll instruct their map makers to be prepared to present, when they present their maps, their analysis of how they dealt with the benchmark maps prior with respect to minority representation.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Meg, you can sit down. But I appreciate your proactiveness. Okay, so we've got 30 minutes, and we are all here, so I think what would be a good use of our time, we have 2 virtual commenters. I would like to take kind of 10 minutes. I know both map drawers did do some work on the Senate maps. If we could take 10 minutes apiece and just talk to us about some of the changes that you made. We are aware of kind of where the agreements are and disagreements are, but that there's going to be probably some changes once you consider further data. I know you want to consider more data and put your best map forward, but some of the changes that you were contemplating making, we would love to hear about that with regard to some of the county line divisions and what your thoughts were when you were allowed to see what happens when you did not just have you weren't confined to the 2% deviation. So if we could, John, are you able to comment on what you did? We'll do 10 minutes and then another 10 minutes, limited questions, so we can just have that out there for our next meeting.
Sure, Madam Co-Chair. I think that looking at the county subdivisions, I don't think we've had the opportunity to really determine which ones are substantive differences and which ones are superficial differences. And I think that Mr. Strasma and his team will show the map that they produced for the Senate that shows those areas from a geographic point of view, and also population overlap. So again, there are about 4 districts that are very, very similar, and the county division differences are just one county versus another. It doesn't change the overall number of divisions. But there are other areas of the state where there are substantial differences in not just the way the districts are drawn, but in the county divisions. And I think that the issue of Hanover County came up in the Senate, where Mr. Strasma's map team divided Hanover into 3 different Senate districts, and there was some discussion about Hanover County. So that's an instance where, there still is substantial disagreement in terms of county divisions. So I wouldn't describe that as a superficial division. But when we look at the Southwest, we're talking about replacing maybe a division of Pulaski County for a division of Smith County. It's still one division. And, I think Mr. Strasma pointed out that in one circumstance, you might be keeping a town whole, and in one circumstance, you might be keeping a county whole. And again, in that situation, it's a 1-for-1 difference. So it doesn't have any real impact on the total number of county or political subdivisions that are divided. But there are some areas where it's more than just a superficial difference.
Okay, thank you. And if we could hear from Zach then, or Ken, and then I think what our question is, we've got 30 minutes while we're here. Is there any other questions that we could answer that may not be impacted by more information on Monday that would be helpful to you? And that, the answer might be no, but we're all here with a quorum. Yes, Mr. Brunio.
It seemed, and I don't want to complicate this, but it seemed like the suggestion of the map drawers is, oh, can you hear me now? Is it even on? Hello, hello. It seemed like there was some sort of consensus when it came to language about avoiding retrogression. Could we at least agree to give that direction? It seems that seems pretty straightforward, even if we're leaving it at that, but at least we shall avoid the retrogression.
And Madam Co-Chair, this is Brian Tyson. Commissioner, I think the key point is there, retrogression has a very specific legal meaning that looks at a certain number of districts versus another number of districts. So I think and Dr. Creighton may want to weigh in on this too, but I think my perspective would be we don't want to give specific instructions that's tied to a numerical number of districts. I think that having the map drawers present how their plans compare to the benchmark as they go through those voting rights areas and how they treat minority voters, as Delegate Simon said, makes the most sense as the way to do that. That way you're not picking any particular number, or the commission is considering kind of on a case-by-case basis and district-by-district basis what best provides the opportunities for minority voters in those areas as compared to the current plan. So I would want to avoid giving instruction about avoiding retrogression just because it has a specific legal meaning that could be tied to a number of districts as opposed to looking at the overall ability to elect.
Thank you, Brian. And Dr. Creighton, do you have anything additional to add to that?
So Brian is right about the legal history of retrogression. It's tied to a federal provision that is no longer, at least at present, effective. But I think it is important to have a comparison analysis brought in. And so language, and I now have it in front of me that Delegate Simon offered earlier, that would speak to a provision that would prohibit the reduction or the diminishing of position of racial minorities with respect to the effective exercise of the electoral franchise, I think would be a good approximation of what should happen here, which is a comparison that doesn't speak specifically to numbers, but it does encourage a consideration of whether or not this proposed map is performing on par or better, as opposed to worse than what the benchmark or last legally enforceable plan was. So I would encourage that if you're thinking about a direction.
And here's my follow-up question. I thought we kind of just dealt with this, and it sounds like now we're circling back. I thought we had a kind of a consensus, and y'all had sort of the guidance that you needed from listening to our discussion, and we did not need to take any further action or adopt anything, and everybody was on the same page. Is that now not the case?
I understand. This is Kareem Creighton again. I understand the direction as being consistent with what I just said.
Okay.
My point simply was, if you all want to take some action, if not using the term retrogression, using language like this in any direction would be preferable. But if you all don't have any objection, we can proceed as understanding that this is sort of the guidance that we're going to give to map drawers pursuant to what you're offering us here.
Correct. Then that is I think, our understanding that we are moving forward. Everybody is on the same page, and y'all have your marching orders. Is that?
Madam Co-Chair, this
yes.
is Brian Tyson. Yes, I agree with Dr. Creighton on this point. I think that we understand. I want to avoid the term retrogression just because of its legal, the legal implications that it carries with it. But I think that we both understand what the commission is asking for the map drawers to present, and we can give that direction to them to present that kind of analysis of what happened compared to what happened before. That's the piece that we're looking at back to the benchmark plan.
Okay, thank you. So with that in mind, let's go back to, I think we were at Zach or Ken starting to explain their map